So one of the other scenarios that we often get asked about is slow application response. And there's a few different definitions for that depending on the type of application. So if it's a web-based application, you could be using the web art module or application response time monitor. And this is actually going to go in and pull data based on synthetic transactions for these different websites. And it's pulling it down either from the OmniCenter itself, or it can be pulling it down from a remote web reflector. As of 9.1, these can be coming from the public internet using Netrio's cloud systems to send in traffic from the outside and benchmark how long that's taking. When I drill into one of these, though, it's going to give me a snapshot of exactly what's going on for a particular application, as well as kind of what the performance looks like for that application over time. So I can drill into an application. It's going to break it down into DNS, TCP, and application response times. And the application response time here represents a full page load, which means it's pulling down all of the images on that page as well as all of the JavaScript on that page. So it gives you a kind of a picture of what it takes to get everything the browser needs to draw that page out. So you can get an indication of if this is a performance problem that's affecting all my users because it's like rolling out over time, or if it's something that might be only affecting a subset of users or a particular remote location. This helps you narrow in on that problem. So here I can see OmniCenter spotted a big spike in the response time for this particular application, but then it died back down. Maybe that was the cause of the problem, and I can go and try and see if other users might have been affected. One of the other things that you can do from an application response perspective is look at the server utilization as well. So for example, if I know that this particular application is hosted on a particular server, OmniCenter is generally monitoring servers at a very deep level. So we've got the ability to go in here and look at, what's CPU utilization on the server, both overall as well as on an individual processor basis, or even on an individual process basis, so I can see if something was slowing things down. So for example, somebody reported that a batch job on the server was running really slow yesterday at 4 in the afternoon when it should have been fast. I can actually go in here and do what's called a top talkers report to see what might have been causing that problem. So first I'm going to narrow in on that particular device because I know that's the server that was affected. And it's going to give me a list of the statistics that I can pull from that. So let's look at what was going on with the CPU on this device. And we're going to pull that up as a per process monitor. So we're going to look at the per process CPU utilization on the system. And we're going to go back in time a little bit on this guy and say, I want to see what was happening on this system. If I go back to, say, yesterday at, let's go 3 o'clock until yesterday at 5 o'clock. And we'll run that report for those 2 hours and see what was going on with that particular system. We're going to sort by peak, so we see who was using the most on that particular system, and then we're going to go ahead and run that report. So I can go in here and identify exactly which processes were using all of the CPU at the particular time my batch job was supposed to run. Now, this particular server actually doesn't have a lot of really interesting data because it's pretty idle in our lab environment. But if I'm looking at a production server, it might suddenly jump out at me that although this thing is a SQL server, the number one process that it was running was zip. And this actually happened to one of our customers where they were having performance problems with the server. And when they ran this report for the time frame, they found out that somebody had scheduled a backup job to get compressed every day at a particular time, and it was conflicting with batch processes that were supposed to be running in SQL at the time. But they were able to narrow that down really quickly because the backup job and zip were consuming all of the CPU when it really should have been SQL. So this sort of ability to go in and grab the forensic data for these different processes, both for CPU as well as for memory as well as for disk I/O, can be really informative in terms of troubleshooting server problems. I can also use this data to go in and generate an automated report. So if I need to send this out, I can email this right now, or I can actually add this in as a section into a custom report, and those custom reports can actually go out on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So if you go to reports and you look at the custom tab, this is where all those custom reports are going to live. And I can actually go in here and, for a particular report, I can preview that report or email it out, or I can actually go in and edit the reports, and then I can see what sections are created. So I can see how many sections are in this report. It'll give me a list of what those sections are, and I can reorder them if I want to, or edit or delete those sections. And I can just add them in straight via the web interface. So any report that I'm looking at that has that email and schedule button will allow me to add that report as a section into one of these existing reports. And then I can go in for that report and run that report either in real time via the web interface, or I can have that report sent out daily, weekly, or monthly as a PDF to any number of recipients. It'll actually slap a cover sheet on there, and then it'll give me the sections that I asked for the particular report that I wanted to generate. So I can use these types of things to eliminate or to reduce the number of alarms that I have to process through. So one of the things that a lot of our customers tell us is, one of the issues with they're dealing with in monitoring is this flood of alarms that they get. And what we generally tell them is that the best practice is to filter out everything that is not a critical alert that you were going to take action on immediately, and instead rely on automated reporting to tell you about these things before they reach the level of an alarm. So for example, I might want to get every day a report that says, here's my remote sites with the highest latency, here's the servers with the hard drives that are closest to full, so I can actually go and address those problems when it's approaching a threshold point and not waiting for a critical failure to happen and then just simply reacting to it after the fact. This will also give me a way to kind of automate the process of sharing status data up with management, for example. So some of the reports that I might want to use are in the built-in category where I've got like the strategic group health report. I can group my devices into these application type groups. And then for any particular time period, like for a particular month, I can actually say, limit this to time of day and day of week if I want to limit that just to working hours. And I can generate that report and it'll kind of show me both what the health of those systems is, what percentage of time they spent in an okay state, as well as if they are declining. So I can see what my rate of change is essentially here, and it'll give me a way to look at, are things getting better or things getting worse for these particular applications? Like here, for example, I can see my services were okay 78% of the time, which is pretty bad, but at least that's improving. It's up 7.84% over the last month, just like this one is up 31% over the previous month. And my thresholds were actually at 100%, and they're basically the same. There's a slight improvement over last month, but it's basically the same. You can even separately break out the percentage of time it spent in an anomaly state. So when it was detecting something that was unusual, but not necessarily a critical failure event like a high watermark threshold or a low watermark threshold. So it kind of gives you the ability to do those sorts of things and kind of drill into that as well.